Well, hey, everybody. Welcome on into The Reckoning, your first bonus episode. That's right. We've got a bonus interview. And if you're a live listener of the show, weekdays on Real Talk, you will have heard Mr. C.R. Stewart by now. But I'm very glad to pull him for a few more minutes, actually. We're going to talk for about an hour here, I hope, on the Britfield series. And we're going to dive into it. If this is the first time that you're joining us, let me introduce you to our, I should say our cast today, our cast of characters. We'll get into that. But I've got Mr. C.R. Stewart here. He was born in Newport Beach, California, spent 20 years, writing fiction experience, nonfiction, movie screenplays. Plays. He's a prolific writer. And right now is marching through the world of Britfield. He is about to release book 5 in a planned series of 7. If you've heard of this, Britfield and the Lost Crown, Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, The Return of the Prince, the Eastern Empire, the most recent release, those are out. If you're not familiar with this, it is a fantastic, I guess I would call it a youth or a teen fiction series, but really, really wonderful for all ages. And I'm just so excited because you all know my love for reading and nonfiction, fiction. There's some great things, especially in the world of literature, that we've just lost with a lot of the modern books that are coming out that are just throwaway, toss away. I'm not a fan of the superhero culture that we're in. And there are a lot of authors who are fighting against that. So here we've got one, the creator of founder of the Devonfield, which is kind of the organization behind the world of Britfield. We'll talk about that, though. Mr. C.R. Stewart, Chad, thank you for joining me. I'm a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's great to be here, and I love how we connected. That was wonderful.
Yeah, it really was, and it was just kind of a series of happenstance and we talked on the phone and kind of went through all of this, but I had heard of your series. I knew about the world of Britfield, that it existed, because as my kids have gotten older, we know, my folks know we've got 3 boys and a little girl at the end. We're prolific readers. We love reading nonfiction. I love reading fiction with my kids, from the little kid books when they were tiny up into big things. And there's so many great stories, great pieces of literature, fiction that just teach wonderful lessons. But there haven't been as many in the modern era that are being produced now that bring forward those character qualities, the values that I'm searching for to teach my kids. Because inarguably, there's something about literature, about music, about art that is connected to our soul. There's a spiritual dimension to it. I firmly believe the Lord created these things that way, and it should be exercised well. So, we've marched through a lot of stuff from Tolkien, from C.S. Lewis. There's some more modern writers. I know, of course, Andrew Peterson and his Wing Feather series. I think it's Smith, S.D. Smith, and his Green Ember series. There's some good stuff that is coming out. And Britfield was on my radar. Happened to see book 1 in a thrift shop, picked it up. We fell in love. I bought the rest of them from your website, and we're now almost caught up because book 5 is coming out this fall. What in the world possessed you to take on this massive endeavor of 7 books that you're working your way through? And then we'll get to the plans I've heard you have for things in the future now.
Sure.
But what brought you to this?
No, I love that. The story behind the story. But so I'm originally from Newport Beach, California. I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts for 16 years. I did my undergraduate in British literature, European history. Actually, it was pre-law, then went on to graduate school, and then MBA, and then got into investment banking. Part of it was I just had never really been in the corporate world. And so I worked for 3 Fortune 100 companies, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. I came from a creative background. I think we all come from a creative background. And then that's sort of stifled as you grow older, and you got to learn dusty old things that you don't want to. And it was at a seminar in Providence, Rhode Island, an insurance seminar. And I was sitting up into the front row because I was trying so hard to pay attention. And I always would try to take a page of notes. And I started to drift, and I started to doodle, and I doodled a circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl, and I wrote The Boy and the Balloon. And that literally, that doodle was the genesis of this entire media empire. And I connected with it. And we've all had those moments where we just connected with something. I thought, gosh, that'd be a fun story to write. And again, dying to do something creative. And so I went home that weekend, and literally on one piece of paper, I just started to kind of outline it. It starts in England, modern day, up in Yorkshire, Northern England. And we can get into all these details because there's a reason for everything that I do in the series. And just kind of said, where do I want to go from Yorkshire, Northern England, and then I thought, Oxford would be cool, and then Windsor, and then London, and then finally down to Canterbury, and the journey along the way. And literally that was it. And I remember being with a girlfriend at the time, and we were fixing dinner that night, and I said that I had that moment, if you will, that I had a sense of what this was going to become. Very interesting, because it's like I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I never wanted to write children's or
Mhm.
young adult fiction. That was never my drive. And so to answer your question, it found me. I didn't find it. I wasn't looking for it. And at the time I was thinking I was just thinking one book, and I kind of came up with the title Britfield and Lost Crown. And again, we can dig into that. And so I sat down, took me 4 years, 2,500 hours just to write book one, Britfield and Lost Crown, 384 pages. And I think by the time I finished, I thought, you know what, I got a series here. And so I was thinking, well, for sure, England, France, and Italy, because those are all
Mhm.
beautiful countries. I lived in England off and on for about 2 years. And two things you learn about writing is you write about what you know and you write about what you love. And I knew British literature, I knew European history. I loved England, I loved the people, the history, all of that. And so that's why I incorporated it. And then as I'm writing book 2 and 3, it eventually ventures into a 5 and then finally a 7-book series. And just finished book 5, Britfield and Lost Treasure, about 5-6 weeks ago. And I was like, that one almost broke me, but that was a tough one.
You got to
And
keep up. I'm into the
yeah,
story now. I got 2 more books that need, or 3 more that need to come
yeah,
after, or 2 more after this. You
yeah.
can't quit on me now.
Oh, you're gonna love 5. I mean, all of them are great, but it's like, and it's hard too. It's if you're writing it like Dickens wrote individual, David Copperfield, Great Expectations, Tale of Two Cities, very different stories, maybe along the same threads. It's hard when you're writing a series because it's you have to you keep building and developing it, and it's like you have a lot of action and adventure in book 1,
Mhm.
fast paced, and it's like, all right, so now how do I improve on that in book 2? And then you have book 2, and then how do I improve on book 3? And you don't want to return to anything, and you got to heighten the action, and then you're developing the characters, and so it's a task. And I tend to, number one, I spend everything I have in the first third, if that makes sense, meaning I don't hold anything back and saying, okay, I'll keep it. I'm like, I throw everything in, and like all the action and all the cool stuff, and then I'm like, all right, what do I got to do now? And second, I spent a good 4 months outlining each story prior to reading. And again, every author is different in their approach. I think it's extremely important to have a beginning and an end because you need to know where you're going. It's like taking a car journey for 3 weeks, right? It's like at least have an end goal in mind. It may change, but you have to have that end goal. But I, just like with book 5, I spent 4 months outlining and putting together 74 scenes, all based on the 3-act structure, plot points, and things like that. So it is a very meticulously planned story. And it's harder to front load it because it's like, like, okay, so like this is what happens in scene 6, and then okay, what happens in scene 7? And you're like, I don't know. It's like you got to figure it out. And like, all right, okay, where do they go from here? I use a lot of maps.
Mhm.
I use a lot of research, and I think that's what makes it fun. I mean, number one, it's based, like you said, it's based in current time. I think that's very important, and I think that's the hardest fiction to write, in my personal opinion. Because if I created um, you know, uh, the fictional world of Narnia, then I can do whatever I want to do. I can create whatever I want to create.
Right.
I can bring characters out of nowhere. But when I'm stuck in reality, and I really do try to anchor these things in reality, and you as being a reader that is now into book 4, you get that sense of it. I mean, they don't just sort of like come from one place and appear in another place, or they don't just suddenly have money from nowhere, or do you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
I'm looking at train times and distances and how long it would take. I'm looking at weather, like in book 4, like what's it like in April in Vienna? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
what kind of flowers grow there? So I don't drown it with detail, but I keep it very real, very authentic. And I think that type of reality absolutely connects with the reading audience. Our youngest readers 7, oldest readers 93, 55% of the audience are adults worldwide. And I'll stop in just a sec, but that's the connection point, because it's like no one's ever going to learn anything or connect to Harry Potter, right? Because it's like you're not a magician. You don't have magical powers. You don't solve problems by waving a wand. You don't have superpowers. You can't fly. If a bullet hits you, you're going to be
Mhm.
hurt. Doesn't bounce off. And so all of those things are out there saturating the market to disconnect kids from reality, make them
Mhm.
feel less than they are, and introduce false narratives and false history.
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's one of the things I love about this series is, don't get me wrong, I love some of the fantasy style,
Sure.
and I'm pretty picky when it comes to that. I've got a special spot in my heart for C.S. Lewis and for
Sure.
J.R.R. Tolkien, and then it kind of
Sure.
disappears from there.
Sure.
I've a few with a few exceptions, because it's one thing if this is just a completely made up world. fine, no problem. But I really have the older I get, the more I have a problem with the infantilized superhero culture, the Harry Potter culture we have, because it's this hybrid of,
Mhm.
well, it's kind of set in the real world, but if you were only special with this or that or the other, and I thought, no, there's
That's
so
it.
many things that are special. There's these
Yes.
God-given traits and
Amen.
characteristics, and that's so neat to see in some of the fantasy series. Yeah, you know, with the Fellowship and Lord of the Rings, and then with
Mm,
you know, this cast of characters, the Pevensey twins, and all the others through Narnia. You're getting these character qualities, but it's just in a fantastical world. Here, what you're
sure.
doing is much more in the concrete world of, no, this is what it looks like to put other people first, to have self-sacrifice, to have family bond, to have courage in the face of fear. It's not being without
Mm,
fear, it's persevering because something more
yes.
important matters. These are things that are real and actionable, and it's inspiring for kids to have a hero to look up to that isn't just in a fantasy world. And it's a good thing to aspire to those characters, but here this is concrete stuff. And even as an adult, it's so important. And I love that, you know, what you've brought in. And again, I'll here, you give me a grade. I'm going to do this without revealing anything. If you're, you know, as you've heard this and you're saying, all right, I want to know about this. What you're getting into is an adventure series, yes, that's centered around, you know, a group of kids and some adults, quite a few. But that's book one is a great adventure. Book two, it goes full blown. Well, my political language would tell me full blown red pill about what's behind, you know, throwing the levers of power and the dynamics that happen behind governments and states and international cooperation and people in power structures who want that for themselves, shadow governments. All, I mean, it is a full blown trip of, you know, we finish a chapter and my oldest son will look at me and be like, now, Dad, how much of this is actually real? I'm like, well,
Right?
it's a little uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you that because no, they don't exactly go by the names that we have in the book, but there really are these
Sure.
kinds of power struggles and
Yeah.
structures of people who want to control things, regardless of nation states and of history and of you know, faith and you know, the Christian religion specifically. I do appreciate you
Sure.
bringing a lot of interesting, what I would call pagan references to the past, and don't glorify them, unlike some of the
No.
other series that shall remain you know, unnamed. What you do is really put them in the perspective of a lot of people seeking power by any means they can get. It's really fascinating, and it's almost scary sometimes what you've woven in. I can tell you know, you live in my modern era because of how you've written. But it's, you know, tell me, I mean, was that a decent representation without getting into details?
Oh yeah, that was great. And you know, like I loved in at the end of book two, Ephesians 6. I touch on
Mhm.
that, and I think book two starts to get into that sort of Tom and Sarah wondering and knowing that there's some divine thing out there that's got their back. And again, I'm not trying to preach to the choir. You know, this is a wonderful. I mean, between you and I, this is, we call it stealth evangelism. That's what the series is. I'm a Christian. This is based on biblical principles, but it's
Mhm.
a family friendly, family focused series for all denominations and a global audience, because who doesn't love the bonds of family, friendship, loyalty, courage, and hope? And if you're asked, those are the five key pillars of it. And if you're asking me what's the number one theme that runs through the entire series, it's family. It's the importance of family, what family means, and not always by blood or birth, but by often bonds that are forged that are even stronger than your
Mhm.
family. That people that are willing to step up and sacrifice their life for another. I mean, there's just nothing more beautiful about that. I mean, there's just so much of that is woven through the series. And then, like you touched on, it's I've been relearning history for I guess almost 14 years now. We all had our sort of aha moment, a wake up, a pivoting point, and you're like,
Mhm.
you start to question the narrative, and you start to go down that rabbit hole. And I've got 1,000 hours into that rabbit hole. So it's interesting. I never like intended to kind of weave that in. You know, it's just like I was focused on just Beverly clearly has she wrote The Mouse and the Motorcycle, Runaway Ralph. I loved
Mhm.
that growing up as a kid. And she goes, if you ever walk into a library or a bookstore and you don't find the book you're looking for, write it. And so I really took that challenge to write Britfield and Lost Crown. And I just wanted to write a book that would be exciting and fun and bring back the wonderment of childhood. And that's why Lewis wrote Narnia. It was never intended
Mhm.
for children, although it's one of the best selling children's series of all time. But he's writing it for adults so they could. And I just got done maybe a couple months ago with the Mark Twain biography, over 1,000 pages. That almost broke me.
Wow.
That was a beast. And I'm not necessarily a total fan of him, but I was just very interested in the author
Mhm.
that wrote it. I've read three of his other biographies. Ulysses Grant was a good one, and some others, Hamilton, I think, but he over glorified Hamilton. But he actually wrote Tom Sawyer for adults. I thought that was very interesting. And then his agent said you should really gear this towards the children audience. And so he didn't really change a lot. He just sort of focused it more when they were pitching it. But he was writing Tom Sawyer for adults to say, hey, you remember what it was like to grow up? And so I think that's why 55% of our reading audience are adults, because I don't speak down because it's geared towards middle school and then young adult. I just speak in general. I'm very aware of my audience. I'm very aware of the ages of Tom and Sarah in book 1 at 12, and then you notice in book 2 they're 13, and then book 3 they're 14, and then 15, 16, and so through the whole series until book 7 they're 18 years old. And you, as a father of 4, you realize that from 12 to 13 is like a decade, right? And then from 13 to 14 is like a decade. It's a big shift, a big difference. And so I'm delicately handling that, along with having a huge cast of characters. We bring in Oliver, who again was, I was writing book 1, who they meet at Oxford, very small character role. And I thought, he's a neat character. I want to bring him back. And then, not to give anything away, but in book 2, and then that revelation, right, of like who his father was. And I was like, oh, that's a nugget, right? And then I love Inspector Fontaine. She's amazing. And then we introduce Kate. And again, I just introduced Kate in book 2, who's this computer geek, and she's a blogger and a podcaster, right? She's getting the truth out there, the resistance. And I just introduced her as a character because I needed Gowerstone to have a place to go to distribute the information he had. And those that will eventually read this will understand what I'm saying. But I liked her as a character. And then I brought her back, in book 3, and she becomes a full character. So we just have this really wonderful cast of characters. You got Tom Sawyer, and then you have Hunter that comes in book 3, and then you have Inspector Fontaine in her 30s, Gowerstone 40s, Henry in his 50s, Oliver and Kate in their kind of mid 20s. And so it really is a very cool. It's not kind of like just a bunch of kids or a bunch of 12-year-olds. Once Tom and Sarah, it's funny too, because we transitioned this into a theatrical play, which we can get into. But once they leave the orphanage, it's like that's really it. With the kids, it's like it's the world of adults, and so it's interesting.
And I got to say, just as a and here I'm going to dive into some of because of course my folks are used to politics. That's what I do. I do political talk every day, all day, but it's always the values behind it. Some of the things I harp on the most, and it comes through in modern media, whether that's film or on the stage or in music or here, in publishing. I'm so tired of the world of all the different dynamics that the modern waves of feminism have brought upon us, where we have the girl boss stories and the this and that, and so much of it is just it's ham-fisted. And here's looking at you, big superhero movies. It's the worst. It's so fake. But here, I love that you, and especially now, I've got a daughter of my own. She's only 6 months old, but we're going to be doing these things with her soon. I love to have examples, characters to point to and say, look, here are people who are strong and courageous. They're using the skills that God has given them. They're moving their lives, but they're also very happy to commit themselves, to submit themselves to other people. I'm here to yield myself to you for this cause, for these friends. Maybe it's a love interest that grows, as has happened a couple, different character sets in the books. Like there's this all works together. I don't have to have my individualism at the expense of giving to other people. But then neither does giving myself into either a relationship with a person or a romantic relationship, a marriage. That doesn't just erase who I am and the skills that God has given me with. These things exist together in tandem. And so much of our modern culture has just suppressed that. No, it is all about you. And only if you are happy in this job or this career or this marriage or these kids on your timing. It's not that. It is about other people, but it's also the things that God has made you good at. I love that you weave those together very well. So I've got strong and independent characters that are good female figures, but also they're here for the cause. They're here for their friends. They're here for their loved one, whoever it is. That's just so good to see, good role models. And I just don't have a whole lot of those anymore in our modern media. So I appreciate the heck out of that.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And I mean, like, I love my female characters. In fact, Sarah was my favorite character up until book 3. I love her. She's smart, very well educated, kind of has a short temper.
What'd you do to Sarah in book 3 that you didn't like her anymore? No, I'm kidding. I know what you mean.
Oh, no, because then we introduced Hunter. And for some reason, Hunter, just because he is like absolutely my favorite character now. Isn't that funny?
It is. Well, and I love you have very good, as someone who raises their kids. My wife and I raise our kids with sarcasm, deeply ingrained. I appreciate sarcastic banter. It's always good.
Like this dry. Yeah, it's very dry, and it's just so funny. And he's like, and as you'll get into like book 4, you're into it now. It's funny because Hunter's the youngest, and he becomes the voice of reason. Tom and Sarah are now 15, and typical teenagers, a little off the reservation now, taking risks they probably shouldn't. Hunter's like sitting here like, should we be doing this? And is this a good idea? And I just, oh, he's so much fun. But no, and then Fontaine, I mean, they're all just great characters to aspire to. And they all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. I mean, Oliver, isn't necessarily a terribly intelligent male figure, but he's got a heart of gold. And he's kind and he's loving, and although he's at Oxford, he's there because of his family and his connections, typical. And but again, too, strengths and weaknesses. And I love the dynamics of all the different characters. And again, I didn't figure all this stuff out. Some authors have this whole freaking thing woven for 7 books. I'm like, go for it. Every book I kind of start from ground zero and continue on. It's easier as I'm building the characters, because I've already got book 6. I got a great start point for book 6, and I've got ideas of where I'm going to do it. Sometimes I was going to do a couple things at the end of book 5, and just it didn't flow. It didn't feel right. And I trust the story. As a writer, when you can trust the story, I'm not trying to push anything. I'm not trying to go for a particular page count, although I'm aiming now that I'm getting into book 4 and 5, I'm sort of aiming within that certain structure. And if it goes 10 pages over or under, it doesn't matter. I don't want another 574 page book like book 3, which is amazing. And the reason it continued on was because the story needed to continue. It wasn't done. It wasn't finished. But real quick, I love that in book 2, when Fontaine's at the train station in Paris, and she's waiting for somebody, and comes up, and it's just so smooth, and you're like, huh, interesting, they had something in the past, right? It's like that little ember is like burning, and just the connection points, as you learned in book 3, Kate and a sibling, right? Not giving anything away there, like that was an awesome revelation. And so it's all these, and then in book 4 you're going to get a major revelation that we come back to Sarah, what happened to her parents and why. And again, so I've been building those threads throughout.
Yeah. And I appreciate it, because it's kind of fun. One of my favorites, I enjoy quite a bit, thriller novels, spy novels, those kinds of, I'm a big Tom Clancy, Jack Carr in the modern era.
Sure.
Love these guys. These are not books I can necessarily share with my kids, though. We got a little bit of adult content, and it's a little intense. But it's really fun to have, hey, I've got a family friendly version of, we're going down that, road, instead of just fantasy and adventure. No, this is really modern thriller, action, geopolitical, all the things, but at a very simple level. And I don't mean that in terms of like, reading aptitude or anything else. I mean, just straightforward. I'm not layering on unnecessary complications. I'm not trying to make something fantastical that's non-believable. I'm just going straightforward. Like, you could read this and go, oh my gosh, that's probably real. And, and it's great to be able to bring that genre to my kids with all the things I'm looking for. It's family friendly. It's got excellent character and values, and we're building things that matter for young people. That's so important. And I love, one of the things I love here, and I'd love to kind of transition into other parts and pieces. This isn't just a book series. And I know you've got, and I'd love to hear about it, you've got plans for a movie. You've already put out the play. There's a screenplay, at least, I think, for book 1, based on book 1, that's available for groups across the country. If they'd like to get the theatrical play, they can buy those resources and rights from you and move forward. But I got to ask, I mean, this is, you're building an empire here, not just a series of books. You're building an empire, which kind of leads me into the questions I'll have after this about you really revitalizing true literature. I know this is something on your radar, but tell me a little, what are the plans for films, the plans for plays, screenplays? Are you going to go for all 7 of these? Is that the goal, or are we just making it an introduction? What's going on?
No. And real quick, we'll jump into that. I want to go back just real quick on the book too. I think what's interesting is, number 1, takes place in current time, and number 2, it incorporates history, geography, art, architecture, and culture. Every single book, we call that stealth education. And so you have kids that are learning about British history, learning about architecture and art. And it's like, if you're telling them it's that kind of book, they're like, I don't want to read it, right? But it's all in there, and it's like it's such a wonderful educational book on top of a fast-paced book.
Oh yeah.
And it's based, we have the 4 C's in every single book: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Again, you're putting Tom and Sarah and all the other characters in situations that they have to figure out. And again, it's talking it out. It's trying things. Sometimes the things don't work, then they try something else. A lot of communication back and forth as they're working out problems. And all of this stuff is so healthy and so strong and so necessary. for this generation. And like we've said, this Britfield is this generation's book series, and we're trying to take people back, back to the grounding of biblical principles, of family values. And I think really what last generation was the Harry Potter world, taking our kids to black magic, witchcraft, and witchcraft is the fastest growing religion in the world, all by design. That's a multi-billion-dollar empire that was built around that series to do just that. We're countering it with Britfield and Lost Crown. We actually believe in the next 10 years we'll outsell it. So
yeah. And if I can just pipe in from personal experience, It has been an incredible educational trip because, you do an excellent job. Thankfully, you stop short of like being a Tolkien wannabe who describes a tree for 7 pages, which don't get me wrong. That man can describe a tree for 7 pages and I am enraptured. I'm ready for it. But you inject enough detail that is historically accurate about a time, a place, architecture in particular has been a big one for us, whether it's geography or architecture. I'll get a question because I'm reading through these with our oldest, who's 11 now. We started last year. We've marched through these 3.5 books at this point. But, it'll be, Dad, we were talking about one of the chateaus in France. What in the world? You just described the double helix staircase. What is that? Oh, well, let's go look it up. And all of a sudden we're doing, drone tours of this chateau. We're looking at the architecture of double helix staircases. And then we've all of a sudden tripped back into all sorts of Renaissance stuff, medieval era, because it's a question because we have a curious kid. And that's what I want. I want curious kids. I want more curious kids, not just mine, who say, what does that mean? And then boom, this one book, you've paused, you've moved off into a whole research project, and you've just learned a lot of things about places in the past and, different parts and pieces of our world. That to me is true education. It's not, repeating facts and figures on a standardized test and being able to meet American education is not education anymore. It's schooling. It's not education. But here, when you have curiosity and you just introduce something to someone and they go off and learn about it, that is one of my favorite things that has happened to this. I can't even tell you from how wetsuits work and diving equipment, all the way back to, Renaissance architecture and cities and family lines. Yeah. We have done so many tangents from this because a question leads us to, well, I can answer some of that, but let's go find out the rest. And we do. Of course, we're a homeschool family. This is what we do in all of life is
Love it.
Let's go figure it out. That is really baked in very, very well to a lot of what you've put in the books. I can only hope that kind of stuff is explored even more in the other mediums you're bringing forward.
Yeah. And I love that. I loved your example when we talked, I guess about a month ago or 3 weeks ago, and how you guys got into this tangent for like a week into castles. And I love that. And like, that's what it's supposed to do. And it was very, again, as a writer, very delicate balance. You're dealing with a historian, if you will. And it's just like, I just remember learning how to write, if you will, in book 1, because the balloon would be flying over the Cotswolds or the Midlands. And then like, it's right over Shakespeare territory, and suddenly I have a paragraph on Shakespeare, and then I'm reading as I'm coming through an edit, and I'm like, this has absolutely nothing to do with the story, and I'm getting it down, and then pretty soon it's like, that's out, because it's not a history book, it's not a travel book, but you plant the seeds, and I love that you pick up on that. And it's like anyone can do anything they want, like Windsor Castle, and then they can pull up pictures and start to do their own deep dives. And I just want to say one more thing, and then we could get into your question, but like with book 5, these books are very, very layered, also, and very strategically written. Huge use of vocabulary. I've got lists of vocabularies, adjectives, adverbs. I try not to reuse the same words. Try not to use the same type of descriptions, which is wordcraft. But if you look at book 1, you got Yorkshire, and I wanted to come back to that. And it's like, it's the Industrial Revolution. It's kind of a stealth shout out to the Industrial Revolution, whether the orphanage, the fraudulent use of funds, that Mr. and Mrs. Grievous that are taking all the funds. The place is called the Workshop. So there's that. And then you get to Oxford, the quote unquote epitome of academia. You get to Windsor, you got royalty. You come to London, you have the sort of finance and banking. And then you get to Canterbury and you have religion. And so again, gosh, you could spend a semester talking about Britfield and Lost Crown. And we actually developed an 83-page study guide based on academic standards for book 1, and it's already being taught in schools across America. So
that's awesome. I love that. And it just, you do a remarkable job pulling in enough to make questions just spin you off into things. But it's something it's particularly in our American culture, and I'm not bashing on my people here, but we're not always very good at old world geography and understanding. But there are so many of our roots. I mean, you don't have to go back to even just the founding era to see philosophically, spiritually, how they were influenced by a lot of things that weren't here, and understanding expanding that world, I think, is very important. It broadens your understanding. It's an excellent thing. So bring me to before we hit the movies, let me hit the play. So the theatrical play. What have you found good success in this? Is this something you plan on growing into the future books as well?
Yeah, we will. And it was funny. So real quick for your audience, when we kicked off Britfield and Lost Crown in August 2019, it was always my quest, if you will, to do a nationwide book tour for a lot of reasons. I'm a strategist by nature, so I was very curious to see what, you hear what's going on in education in schools out there. I wanted boots on the ground. And so, I drove 9,000 miles. I visited 23 states, presented over 200 schools, more than 50,000 students. In some auditoriums, we had 400 4th through 8th graders, and it was amazing. And I was giving a really wonderful presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about Britfield, but just got into creativity, storytelling, the importance of having ideas, and it was just very, very dynamic and very, very interactive. And so it was at one of the schools that we were at. It was actually Mission Viejo, Southern California, and there was a drama teacher there, Michelle. And I was like, I just got done with the presentation. We did the book signing and I was leaving. And she goes, "You ever think turning this into a play?" And it's like, I've thought about everything, movies, merchandise, I'm like, no, I didn't. And so, but that seed stuck with me. And I think it was about 12 months later. And I had a really good relationship with this particular school. In fact, they were the first one when I launched my tour, and then I'd been back there like 3 or 4 times. And so she helped me over 18 months take this 384-page book and get it into a 90-minute 2-act theatrical play, specifically really for middle school and even high school students. And the first thing she told me was, your lead actors can't have more than 50 to 60 lines. And I thought, okay, good to know, right? Because this isn't a movie where you can stop and then redo. This isn't adults that have memorized massive monologues and stuff.
Right.
And it didn't change the scope of it. It just helped mold it. But so actually at the end of the day, it's, and then we piloted it at school for 4 successful nights, 250, 300, people, families, students watching it. And it was really cool too, because from the first night to the last night, they kept getting it tighter and tighter and tighter. And it was just so smooth. And so it's got something like 28 sound effects. It's got 54 digital slides. So the idea is, instead of changing sets, you can project it in the background. So if they're flying over England, you get to see these gorgeous green rolling hills. When they're coming over Oxford, you see the steeples of Oxford. It was set up too, because I come from a film background too, so I'm seeing it visually. Like with the first scene is on the main stage. When those lights go down, we have another scene over here on the right. And then when that goes down, it's back up here. And then when that goes down, it's on the left. And so you never have a curtain coming down, and you never have a break in it. It just moves. We even use the front. In front, we use the aisle, but the fourth wall is never broken.
Yeah.
And it was really cool too, because there's one scene where Thomas Aaron, like in London, and you hear 2 voices in the back, as you're staring at the stage, and it's just them walking towards downtown London right there. And it was amazing. And it's got speaking roles for 30 student actors. And I think that's great. I think all the students are incorporated throughout it, whether they're playing an orphan or a cop,
Yeah.
And so it was designed as an actor's play. And I don't get me wrong with musicals, but I think especially in elementary and high school, and middle school, it's just saturated with musicals. And so really what it does is, number one, how many kids really want to go out for musicals? Number two, it isolates all the others that are just backup singers, and the 2 key or 4 actors that are just the singers. And it's just a whole different ball game. It's just, I wanted an actor's play. I wanted kids could get the full acting experience, and it's placed in modern day. And so it's an educational thing. So I'm very excited about it. I'm very, very proud of it. And in fact, I was just a homeschool consortium in Oklahoma about a month ago. Has purchased it, and we were talking online, and I was kind of guiding her in. She's all excited. They're going to be putting it on this fall. Someone up in Washington's doing it this fall. So it's really cool. Little by little, it's growing. And so that's going well with the play. And then the idea, I think I could definitely see eventually, the Britfield musical on a sort of Broadway stage, bringing in sort of the amazing team that did Les Mis, right? That's one of the greatest stories, one of the greatest musicals of all time. And so that type of, where you have just epic songs, not just not one per musical, but like the whole frickin' thing, it's like I still listen to that music probably once a week. It's so beautiful, it's so heartwarming, the story's so good. So that's kind of potentially a long-term plan for the play. And then
Yeah.
we're shifting into the movie. There'll be 7 live action, feature length live action movies. This is a 9th draft, final finished script of Britfield Lost Crown. It's probably about 2.5 years in the works from starting it to finishing it. I just did a final edit on it. I hired a professional scriptwriter, but then over the course of revisions, I'll tackle it, every 3 months or something, come through it, smooth it, tighten it. So it's ready, it's locked and loaded, it's ready to go. You're looking at about a 2-hour and maybe 10-minute movie. 2-hour would be great. I mean, Star Wars was 2 hours, Harry Potter was 2.5 hours. So we kind of figure, like, in those 2 massive successful films, we're trying to gauge it around 2 hours, 2:10. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, now I was going to say, when you finish, I was just thinking, how do you fund all of this? Because here's what happens typically. You get a good idea, someone comes along the way, and then your work ends up kind of getting co-opted, because
Sure.
necessarily you have to have other screenwriters. You've got to have people who know their profession, whether it's stage plays or movies or the recording or the releasing and everything. You end up in studios, you end up in other companies, and your
Yes.
work ends up changing. It sounds like you've had a major amount of influence over maintaining the integrity of the story, whatever the medium is. So, I mean, there's a lot of independent companies that are springing up doing filmmaking and all sorts of
Yes.
stuff. Like, what's the plan forward? If I can ask some of the details behind it,
Sure.
because that's not
Absolutely.
cheap and it's not easy to maintain the integrity of your work.
No, coming into this, I knew it was needed. I had some background, and I got 2 great literary agents, and I was published on a non-fiction side, and had that whole industry overview of what it was. So coming into Britfield, I knew for a fact that we needed 100% creative control, and that we needed to build, like you said, a media empire, and the infrastructure that's we've been building for literally 12 years. To the extent that we've got 5 major, come back to it in a minute, beachheads, and I'll go over that in a minute. We've got a wonderful distributor out of Britain that we locked in a couple of years ago that covers all of Britain for the books, all of Britain. So it's libraries and retail, Ireland, parts of Europe. I've got a wonderful rights agent out of France. And so we're coming up to the 5th time that we'll be at the October book fair, which is like the Oscars of the book world, and amazing. We always get an amazing place there, and we got 18 different countries right now that are interested in the international rights, including Japan, India, South Korea, Mexico, Germany, you name it. And we've already been published in Poland, in Polish. So it's just like there's a lot of these dominoes that are set up. So it is. We were funded. I funded it myself to launch this. We had private investors. We just launched our 2nd capital raise recently, for the dynasty and for the film. And so it's all personally funded or through private investors, and it keeps the integrity in check. I think it's a wonderful potential legacy investment, for families or for people that want to support something. The difference is like we don't talk about what we're going to do. We're doing it. You know what I mean? And if you want to be involved in that and be a part of this and see the change everybody needs and wants, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of layers. It's very intense. It's a lot of work. I'll come back to Beachheads. I mean, this is a global series. It's designed as a global series. It's designed as a classic series. It's like it's not going away, in 10 years from now. It's only building. And so, like, our, really for the United States, that was our pilot program. All the US has been for us for the last 7 years as a pilot program, testing it out, building the brand, building the infrastructure, building the team. Really, we are now shifting from what I would call a soft release into a global launch, probably by October, maybe September, maybe October. So it's kind of a fun time to be doing interviews, and for your audience, because this is a major pivoting point, and it's needed. Kids need their souls fed, and not distracted and poisoned. And so that's a beach. So one beachhead for us is South Korea. And we've got a huge publisher there that we've been working on, that's ready to go once the film gets a little bit farther along, and that'll be our beachhead for Asia. We got a big publisher in India that'll be our beachhead for that region. Poland, believe it or not, was our like people don't think about Poland. I totally think about Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Poland came up to buy the rights, I thought perfect, because Poland's our beachhead for Eastern Europe, and it's a perfect pivoting point. And then England is our beachhead for Europe. And so, we're building, and then potentially either Brazil or Argentina will be our beachhead for South America. Just got back. I was in South America for two weeks as part of an educational program and doing research for book 6. And so, it was great, boots on the ground. And again, too, with the series, all these places that Tom and Sarah are going, most of them I've been. And you don't have to, you can write about Australia and never go there, but I think it gives it that sense of authenticity, and it's like, book 1 and like the Duke's Hotel in St. James, right, where they stay the night, and it's like, that's a real hotel, you can go stay there. And I've stayed there. We're having tea at the Browns Hotel in Mayfair, been there, stayed there, had tea there. And so, and it's funny too, back to that whole Chambord, the famous castle in the Loire River Valley. We had a couple of years ago, a friend of a friend said, our daughter loves your book series. She's read it like multiple times. In fact, she's started her own book club, Britfield book club. And she goes, she's got her 13th birthday coming up. Would you surprise her, and come to this lunch? And so I did. And it was really cool. And she was like blown away. They just got back from England and France because of the book series. And so they went to Chambord, and she's showing me pictures that they took. And she's like, this is where Henry threw the smoke bomb in that one room. And I just thought, fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Like and like what you did with your sons. And that's what I want to, I want to inspire. I mean, Britfield's not just to entertain and educate, but to inspire travel, inspire different cultures. It's like, I'm from California, and there's something about California, which is in some ways unfortunate with a lot of my friends. It's like, they grow up here, they go to school here, they work here. And it's like, they don't even go to like another state. You know what I mean? Right. It's just like, it's like a bubble. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a whole world out there. And then that's what I'm trying to introduce with Britfield. I think by the time we're done with book 7, we would have included anywhere from 50 to 60 different countries. That's kind of cool. So.
That's awesome. And I mean, again, to the point of it, it's so needed to have, empires like this, of good quality, of good history, of bringing these things together. This is, these are the kinds of lasting things. I don't think, quite frankly, many of the modern media age, the movies, and when I say movies, films, and some of the modern recording industry with music, these things are not going to last the test of time. They're popular for now. They'll be popular for maybe a few decades.
Yes, that's just it.
But it's not. I mean, there are musical pieces that have lasted, centuries of time. Hymns and classical pieces from Beethoven and Bach to there are things that last the test of time, but literature, written word, and storytelling, and real honest to goodness places in history, even if it's a fictional story. I mean, for crying out loud, we've spent a lot of time this year talking about the Odyssey, one of the oldest stories that's been told. Those things last for a long time. It is worth putting great care into them to see it last and to see it, continue. And I see here, but you sent me your press release actually just out this week that Devonfield is launching a new capital initiative support. Just as a brief break before we get to maybe a final set of topics here, how would someone get in on that? What if they're looking to be a part of this? I mean, it's not exactly like a crowdfund or Kickstarter. What would someone do to say, how do I get in on this? Because I'd like to support it. This is fantastic. What's going on?
Yeah, it's our second capital raise. There's C shares into the Britfield dynasty. We call them legacy investments because once the investors are eventually paid back plus 20%, depending on how much they've invested, it's profit returns in perpetuity. So forever, for the next 100 years. I always love the example of Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? And I think Alec Guinness, it didn't get paid a lot for his role in Star Wars, but he got like 2 points or something on the back end or something like that. And by today's standard, it's something like $100 to $200 million.
Right.
And it includes everything, includes all 7 books, all merchandise we can get into too. But so we've got, if they're interested, they can go to our website, just contact us. Or info@britfield.com. Very easy. Info@britfield.com. And then we can send them some more material and set up a discussion point. It's an exciting time. I mean, could you imagine if you could have been involved in Star Wars at the beginning? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm using that as an example, but Star Wars is a sci-fi thing.
Right.
It's like, this is a family focused. I don't know anything like it. I always said it's like Hardy Boys meets Nancy Drew meets James Bond. Right. So
yeah.
But yeah, and so it's gonna be 7 major motion pictures. Movie 1 is transitioning now into pre-production. We hope to. I mean, my goal is now to film in England, and I know you don't have to. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Most of what you see, they always call Canada Hollywood North, and most of the New York scenes
Yeah.
is Toronto.
Yeah.
Just as an example too, I thought it was interesting. In the last Raiders of the Lost Ark with Harrison Ford, the New York scenes were filmed in London. I thought, what the frick? And then like Napoleon, if you remember that a couple years ago,
Yeah.
that takes place in France was filmed in England. And I'm like, really? And so, you don't have to do that, but I just keeping within this authenticity. I mean, it's all going to be British actors.
Mhm.
It's not Americans doing a British accent, and there's nothing against that. I love the authenticity of it. I want to film in England. I want to be working with British teams, and I want British actors. Then we get into France. I want to film in France. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be all of it, but I want enough of it, if that makes sense. And from a logistics standpoint, I think it still works too. I think it's easier to film in England than to be filming in Romania, because you get 20% disc. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, and this
Right.
is like the travel and all the coordination. It's like, really, let's just anchor ourselves. So it's gonna be 7 major motion pictures. We've got 2 potential television programs in the works right now. There's obviously the theatrical play, and then there's a whole line of merchandise that we've been developing. One is the Royal Tartan, the Britfield Royal Tartan, which I've already
Mhm.
finished, and it'll be registered in Scotland as a Royal Tartan. So kind
Hmm.
of like my last name's Stewart, and we have actually I think 12 different Royal Tartans. So all those Scottish names with the tartans and stuff. So it's very cool, and that'll lead into products. You're looking at board game. I love board games, and believe it or not, the board game market is a $2 billion market, growing at 5% every year. Go
I
figure.
believe it.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the Britfield board game. I remember I was talking to this merchandise expert, and he goes, "If you could combine risk and life," he goes, "you got, you got." I love someone that could summarize something in one sentence, and it's like, "Thank you." Like I
There
got
you
it.
go. Man, that's exciting, because I mean, the only thing we have more of in our house than board games is books.
I love
Otherwise,
that. Yeah.
that's pretty much it. Those are the 2 things that take all of our shelf space across multiple rooms. But
So it'll be quality over quantity,
mhm.
and they'll be like sort of our first 5 or 10 core products that will be in development and probably already developed prior to the first movie. And once the first movie is out, it'll be 18 to 24 months per film. It won't be a long draw. In fact, probably by early next year, we'll start script 2, Britfield and the
Mhm.
Rise of the Lion. That'll be tricky because it's like the page count, right? But
Right.
so yeah, so I mean, so there will be 7 major motion pictures and 7 books and everything that follows. So it is an absolute world of Britfield, and I mean, I don't want to waste time for the interview, but I mean, we've developed a lot of things, a lot of ideas, a lot of strategies. I mean, there'll be tours of England, the Britfield tour of England. I mean, that's what's so cool is like you can go there as a family and see these places, and they're real.
Mhm.
And it's just getting kids more, not a lot of kids are like, I don't want to go to England, but it's like suddenly if they're Britfield fans and they see the movie, like,
Mhm.
let's go to England. You know what I mean? And you get to walk Windsor Castle and Oxford and London and like Hyde Park. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's the Serpentine Lake. That's where the balloon crashed. And then walk, like, I think the Duke's Hotel is going to need to give me some back end, bonus points and stuff. You know what I mean? Like all these places, we
Yeah.
even have a shout out to the Connaught Hotel in Mayfair right there on the corner and stuff. But it's okay. Yeah, some of our brands are like Range Rover and other things. So we'll see. We'll see if they want to give me some love. But
You know what? Kickbacks are welcome. An affiliate code, it couldn't hurt. Just an affiliate
yeah,
code. No, and it really is bringing history alive like this, which, I know it's fictional characters set in the modern
yeah,
time, but it really does bring history alive, and it weaves in so much that leads to so many questions. And really, that I love it. By the way, I think I mentioned it at the beginning. Britfield.com. If you search it on the internet anywhere, you'll find it very quickly. The world of Britfield, but Britfield.com is where you can go and sign up for this. You can even, I love the workshop option. If you want to sign up for a workshop,
Oh, actually,
with
we only did that over the summer.
only
So
did that over the summer. Well, then
I emailed them. Yeah, I'm sorry.
mark
I
calendars for
emailed
next
them
summer.
yesterday, and I'm
Well,
like, you
no,
guys
no.
got to. Yeah,
The fact that you do that, though, that there
yeah,
is an offer of, hey, a workshop. You have a kid who's really interested in writing. Do a workshop with me, and we'll work through some of these things. I love that. I think that's fantastic, because
it was cool.
to me, what it indicates, and here's really my final my final point that I'd love to drive home or ask you about. What it indicates is it's not just you, Chad Stewart, here to make a bunch of money on a little empire that you're building, having fun writing the stories, and I'm making a bunch of bank. No, this is more than that. This is about revitalizing
Yes.
history and literature and architecture. This is revitalizing the arts back to a very great, I would say, Western tradition. I mean, we're part of the Western tradition here, but of course, you're traveling the globe over and have
Yes.
more to do. But there's such a rich history in understanding that and appreciating it, but then in inspiring the next generation of people who want to bring forward that kind of lasting creativity, these kinds of values that you're building in.
Mm.
That tells me that you've got a very long-term view. This is not just for
Hmm.
you. This is for all people for all time moving forward, because we
Absolutely.
have reached this modern era of quick and easy accessible media that's short form. It's distracting. It really just
Mm.
breaks your brain, and it does not feed into, I think, the good and the beautiful things, the true things that God has given us that we're supposed to replicate in our art forms. I mean, essentially, you are like looking to, you're making an awesome series, but you're looking to revitalize all of literature and the arts.
Yes.
And I love that. I mean, it's just, was that your goal at the outset, or is it just, has it morphed into that as you have marched forward with these books?
No, it wasn't. Again, God thing. So I can take zero credit from this thing, this Britfield world, really. And it's
Mhm.
it's interesting too, because we're having an impact on literacy. Get a lot of feedback from
Mm.
librarians and kids, mostly boys, 14, 15, 16, reluctant readers, and they'll say, just, here, take this Britfield book. And they come back 2 or 3 days later and they read the whole thing. They go, I want book two. And it's the first sort of novel they've ever read. And there's a great story of a librarian in Louisiana at the school, and I think we visited it and years ago, and she had that same kind of thing where the kid just
Mhm.
was reading sort of comic books and stuff like that. She gave him a Britfield book, and he loved it, and he's not a reader. And I wasn't a reader when I was young until I found something I loved. And so she's doing parking duty, at the end of the day. And also this mom, is in her car driving, rolls down the window and said, you're the one that got my son to finally read, and all because of Britfield. And I just love that story and that kind
Mhm.
of impact. So there's just, again, lots of unintentional things, but it's the way that it's written. I was a script writer or wasn't a script writer, wrote scripts as a thing that I enjoyed doing, and challenging myself, taking stories for decades. And so when I got into book one, I mean, it's like, that's why 90% of the people that read book one say it reads like a movie. It's economy of words. You start on the action, you end on the action, just like in you being into book four now. You've read through them, and you probably have noticed that the flow of the story, there's no over description, ending, and the breakups of the different characters and the
Mhm.
scenes, and then paralleling. It's like I kind of work in threes. That's Tom and Sarah, and then it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and then you bring in Fontaine and Gowerstone, and then you have like Oliver and Kate, and then you come back to those guys, and it weaves and it rolls and it moves just as if we're watching this fast paced series on television or in the movie theater. And so I'm very aware of that. And um, I do it's 20% writing and 80% rewriting and editing. I
Mhm.
spend enormous time on the edit, and then once I'm done with the computer edit, I get into a paper edit, and it's night and day. And I learned that in book one. You could have the most beautiful page that you've written on your laptop, and then you print it out and you read it, and you're like, what is this trash? It's
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like I'll never forget. There's one paragraph, and I used the word jump like 5 times, and I'm like, how did I freaking miss that? Like, and so I do the paper edit, and then by then it's very tight. And my goal is to get rid of one sentence per page.
Hmm.
What absolutely doesn't need to be there? What's redundant? What's repetitive? Can I take two sentences, combine them in one? I call that a power line. If I could take my ultimate goal as a writer, and I'm always learning, always growing. But if I could take a paragraph and get it in of describing something, and could I do that with one or two sentences and have the same thing? And so that's my goal. And I also write in a creative aspect where I frame stuff, like you mentioned and referenced earlier, but don't over describe it. You don't need the dew dripping off the leaves early in the morning as the sun's coming up. But it's like, this isn't poetry. This is story.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't support it, it's not in there. Now I do have fun, as we're traveling, and like in book three, like, right, I love that scene in that famous museum with the David statue,
Mhm.
and so I go out of my ways to bring in some of this stuff and
Mhm.
and bring it in there, but I don't overly describe, which I think unfortunately most authors do, and I think it dulls the story. I call them speed bumps or barbed wire. You're
Right.
reading along, and all of a sudden, boom, paragraph, and it's like, what do I care what the car looks like? You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like it's a fast paced, cherry red Ferrari. Got it. That's all I need to see here. I don't need to have the tires glossing and the leather seats, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Stop
Mhm.
it. And so, write concise and write forward and write with action and write with movement. So it doesn't matter what you're writing. I don't care if it's a drama, action, love story. Write fast, write with action, write with movement. So
Mhm. Yeah, I have a little space for that. When you've created your own world like Tolkien did or something, now please
yeah,
feel free to describe it for me so I can see it. But
sure,
for the
sure.
real world, I know what
Fair
that
enough.
looks like.
Yeah.
That's my only my one well my 11-year-old's one beef is the way that you do the story in threes as you have the cliffhanger and then we move to another part.
Mm.
He can't see
He
it
wants
because
to
he's sitting
leapfrog.
back.
Wants to
And
leapfrog.
he's I see the little asterisk coming up and I'm like, oh, we're about to hop here and it's not going to be the same characters. So when I take a pause and a breath and then I start with another section of names, he's always just like, "Oh, come on, I want to know." I'm like, "Don't worry, we'll get there in a
Come
page or two.
on.
Give it a second." My only beef is that you have taken me through as the read out loud person, you have taken me through a long round of refreshing myself on pronunciation of
Mm,
French names and of British names and of Italian names, and now we're into Eastern Europe, and I've got my German and Russian things that I'm having to come back to. So I'm having to go and do a little bit of research as we reach some of these things so that I can properly
mm.
pronounce as I'm saying it out loud. But that's not a bad beef to have. It's a good one.
No,
Um,
no.
I love it. I love what you're doing. I love that it has so many educational components, literacy components. It's
Yeah.
got the historical components. But more than anything, I do just so appreciate the real world values. That this is not some fantastical. If only you were special, like this fake character with a fake
Yes.
superpower or
Yeah.
a magic wand or whatever it may be. You've got stuff that kids can aspire to, whether it's the
Mhm.
adventurous going and visiting these places, seeing and understanding more about them, or if it's just the how do I take care of my friends and my family? How do I lead and serve other people? All of it is so very real and so very needed in today's world. I cannot thank you enough for putting
You're
something like this
welcome.
together, for continuing it. And I'm so excited to see what comes out of it. The movies, the books. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good movie. I love a good
Sure.
play on the stage, but the book base. There's some really neat stuff here. Book 5 comes out in January. Is that right? Global launch in January.
Yeah, for our fan base, we've already been doing pre-sales for book 5, so you can actually go to our website, Britfield.com, and pre-order it. You'll actually get it probably by December 15th. So I like to say before Christmas, before we launch globally in January, probably January 15th for book 5. So, and I'm in edit mode now, but and book five is just extraordinary. It's amazing. So layered, so much fun, so much heart. And I think book 5 is interesting because it comes back and anchors into book 1 more so than I think the
Mhm.
others. They all build off of it, but I think part of that reason was because I'd spent the last 18 months like on the script. I mean, not many authors
Mhm.
are going back to their first book. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're on to second and third, but because of the script, I keep coming back, and I feel it has that sort of heart and flow of it. And again, Britfield lost Crown, Britfield lost Treasure. There's such a parallel to it,
Mhm.
although it's like I think 4.5 years later. And just to talk about scenes, I mean, one of the most magnificent scenes in the whole book, this is a God thing, but was in Mongolia as they're escape. They're in, book. I don't want to give away that, but book 5 starts in Siberia, and 17 months later, interesting number, and and then they're trying to get to a place in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, safe house, and Tom Sawyer and Hunter, and so they're kind of coming through Mongolia and the forest and stuff, and they're trapped, right, and
Mhm.
they're being chased by the committee and hired military people, and finally they stumble across a group of nomads, and the nomads take kindness to them and say, you look like you need help, and they're like, yes please, and they're like, we help you, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was really cute because like the key character, he's like 30, speaks a little bit of English, and he goes you look lost, and he goes, we're absolutely lost, and he goes, what happened? And then Sarah said, we just escaped from a prison in Siberia, and he goes, most interesting. It's just cute, but it's so tender of how these nomads help them.
Mhm.
They get on some horses and camels, they ride to their tribe, they're treated like family. They're given a beautiful yurt, and they have a big celebration dinner, that night. And it's like, when have you ever read a book about nomads? Or what do you know about Mongolia? Nothing. What do you care about it? Nothing. And I make it special because it is special, because people are people wherever you go. And it's just a tribute to humanity, to God's human spirit, kindness. And it's like one of my favorite scenes in the entire book. And it just happened out of happenstance, because I'm into the scene, I'm real, I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, now what happens? You know what I mean? And where do they go from here and stuff? So it's cool. It's got so much heart.
That's awesome. I can't wait for it. And I'm on the list. I have already pre-ordered my copy of book 5. Hopefully we'll get it in December. But this is something moving and growing. Again, Britfield.com. I encourage you, go check it out. Just at bare minimum, buy a copy of the first book. Buy the set. You will not be disappointed by what you find. And well, the only concern I have is if I ever come to a point where I trip across the news headlines for the day, Chad, and I realize that there's some sort of secret where we say, wow, the people sitting on the British throne are actually not the real heirs to, the British lineage. I'm going to be like, all right, Chad, what do you know? What have you been withholding? Because this is all starting to come true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. I'll tell you real quick too, as a funny thing, because we like to keep these books, if you will, like sort of modern, and in many ways, like I remember when book 2 came out, people were coming back to me and saying, like, what are you, prophetic, because of stuff we were talking about? And I'd written it 5 years prior. It's just I've done the research. But in book 1, I was referring to the Queen, and you might have that book. I might have mentioned that to you. And I went back in 2024 and changed like 40 different places in book 1 to the royals, and because I didn't want it dated.
Okay.
So I kind of think it's kind of cool that those are sort of, if you will, collector's items out there.
Well,
that first. Yeah.
Now I got to get home and check my copy and see, because I don't know. That's the one that I stumbled across.
Yeah, it's the Queen. I bet you anything.
That's the one I stumbled across in the thrift store that was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Let's give it a try. And little did I know we would become committed fans, and again, fans of, I'm sure, what is to come. Britfield.com, go look it up. The play, there's a tour, there are workshops in the summer, the books are there, and of course a lot of things still coming in the world of merch. I so appreciate, Chad, you sitting down with me and giving me a little bit of an insight into this, the history of it, and where it's going from here. I appreciate the heck out of what you're doing. There is, I think, no higher calling than to inspire the new young generations and old alike, old and middle-aged, to go back, to re-examine, to dig into our history, but also just to be thinking critically about what's happening in the world around us. And I know we spent a lot of time on the history side of it, but really, folks, the storyline as it weaves through is, you will find, prophetic when it comes to some of the things that we are paying attention to in the modern day. And I tell you, those dynamics go back to the Garden of Eden, good versus evil and deceit.
Sure.
It is a story as old as time, but it's being retold here in Britfield by you, Chad. And I just, it's wonderful. And I can't wait to see what happens as you move forward. Thank you for giving me a look into this in a deeper level. And boy, I wish you all the best and success in what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, they make great gifts. We got the holidays just around the corner. I think they're wonderful gifts. I think they're great for adults as well as, children, grandchildren. And, we have many people from literally around the world that have bought the whole four books, but just at least to get to book 1. If you're ordering through the website, I'm still signing books, and I think that's kind of cool. And I myself, as an author, love to get signed books from authors. It makes it special. Yeah. So, but again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the other platforms, but the website's kind of the key place to go. So yeah,
get a signed copy. Give all your money to the author. Don't let Amazon get a cut, folks. Don't let Amazon and Barnes & Noble have a cut. Just support Chad and make sure that he sees it all going through the site. Well, that's that. Britfield.com. Chad, I'm sure we'll be talking in the future as more things come up. Like I said, a few key headlines kick off in the news. I'm going to be calling you because you obviously have some kind of connection that I didn't know about. But
real quick too on that, because like on book 4, we get into quantum computers and AI manipulation of the stock market. And I was like literally editing the scene I'd already written when that whole thing had happened in Japan and stuff. So it's very funny. So much of this stuff parallels what's happening now. So
and I know it had to be written before some of the things that are happening, but it is very prescient. It is it's impressive, what you're able to see coming and just put it in. It's I think something we will barely have scratched the surface of, quite frankly, here in the real world, some of the dynamics that you're discussing. So there you go. Tom, Sarah, Hunter, the committee, the resistance. I encourage you to go and buy copies of the books, get to know this, and pay attention to what's going on. Britfield.com. CR, Stewart, Chad, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Been an honor. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.